End of Watch.
End of Watch is next.
Which the reason I tie those two things together is because William Friedkin tweeted, having seen End of Watch, that it may just be the best cop film ever made. And then he tweeted afterwards that he didn't know who the people who made it were, but he was really amazed by the way in which they'd got inside cops' lives, the reality of cops' lives. And Friedkin does know a thing or two about this, because obviously, he started out making documentaries about police, then he made French Connection. I mean, Cruising is another thing which is very steeped in. I mean, he has spent an awful lot of time with policemen. He's very good at understanding that world. So coming from him, that is high praise indeed. David Ayer, who of course wrote Training Day, and obviously draws on a wealth of cop movies, but is essentially attempting to do something slightly different, which is that in the past, the interest of the cop movies is the thin line between the cops and the criminals, the good and the bad, the black and the white, divided like that, and saying, okay, well, actually, isn't everything just sort of shades of grey? What this attempts to do is to say, no, the cops are the good guys, and the interesting line is between the lives that they lead professionally, in which they face extraordinary life and death situations, and the normal lives that they lead at home, and the way in which they either compartmentalise those things or allow those things to seep in and sort of, and cross-fertilise. So what you have is Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena, who are two cops working the very, very dangerous streets of South Central LA. And what you see is, in between the car chases, in between the shootouts, in between the busts, in between the investigative stuff, you see them spending time in their car, talking as normal people would about the sort of normal things that are going on, whilst all this other chaos is raging around them. Here's a clip.
Dude, are you gonna hook up with a Mexican girl?
You're trying to hook me up with them, dude.
Dude, it'd be great if you did.
I get it, man.
Sweet brown sugar. You should marry one of my cousins.
If they're anything like you, I wouldn't be able to stand an hour with them. Waking up in the morning, they'd be like,
Hey, can I tell you a story?
I know.
Here's a story about this, and a story about that, and a story about this, a story about that.
But dude, all you gotta do is this. All you gotta do is
it.
Yeah.
You want to come to my cousin's quinceañera, my daughter's quinceañera, my brother's quinceañera,
Yeah.
my sister's quinceañera.
There's always something happening though, bro. It's better than like, hey, do you know the new kind of flavored coffee I have? Do you like
really?
this kind of coffee? The
up,
baristas are excellent.
you like coffee, dude. Don't give me that.
So as you can see,
A lot of Anglo-Saxon.
A lot of Anglo-Saxon, obviously, and there wasn't. Just to point out, there is nothing in the movie in which we don't have to do that. But the point about it is that it's meant to be the way that people talk, and they are talking about stuff, the stuff of their ordinary lives. They've got relationships, they've got wives, they've got girlfriends, they've got families, they've got extended families, they've got things going on in their ordinary lives, and around the edge of it is this other thing going on, which is the jobs that they do, which do involve them putting themselves in life and death situations, in situations which are extremely terrifying to most of us, and then going back and carrying on their home lives. And I think this is the reason why Friedkin said this is an extraordinary depiction of the way of the reality of cops' lives. Firstly, because it is a film that, as I said, deliberately distances itself from that idea, which is very, very familiar in cinema, which is, the good and bad, the cop and the criminal, two sides of the same coin. This is saying absolutely not, but that's not the story. The story is they are the good guys, they are doing the good thing, and they are wrestling with all this other stuff. I would like to be able to say that means that the movie itself is, really solidly great. There are problems, and the problems are twofold. Firstly, that there is, whilst all that is going on, there is a necessity, or a perceived necessity, to tie that to an increasingly melodramatic crime thriller plot. So even as the characters themselves are behaving very, very naturalistically and giving you all this stuff around the edges, which frankly I would watch an entire movie of, the movie makers feel that there has to be a narrative arc in which everything is leading up to something and it's going somewhere, and there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. Point one. Point number two is that Ayer has said he wanted to get this sense of it being very real, and he said, I wanted it to be like watching YouTube. And funnily enough, I've just been interviewing Ben Wheatley about his new film Sightseers, and he's the guy who made Kill List, and he was talking about the same thing, the YouTube sensibility of, you look at something and it's scrappily filmed, and therefore that makes you think it's real, which is very close to the found footage thing. And there is this strange device, and I think it's, for myself, it was a misstep, strange device in End of Watch, in which we see an awful lot of cameras. There's a little device whereby the Jake Gyllenhaal character is actually studying film as part of his pre-law, so therefore he's got a camera with him, and he mounts a camera on his shirt, and there's a camera in the car, and there's surveillance cameras. And then at some point we even get, some bad guys filming themselves on mobile phones, explaining to the mobile phones what they... So he sort of tied himself up in this idea that the whole thing is going to be sort of caught on, reality found footage stuff. Although... I don't really need to have that explained away to me. I mean, I as you know, I'm not a huge fan of it. Okay, fine, found footage, move on. It's possible to do something which is real and visceral in your face without having to constantly put the cameras in the drama and explain them away. So I think, firstly, that is a misstep. And the second thing is that causes the naturalism and the very hard-earned naturalism, because the fact is, Gyllenhaal and Pena went out on the streets with cops for 5 months, whatever it was. There's been an awful lot of this stuff in the press about how they went along and, worked on raids and saw the most terrible things. And you do get the feeling that when they're talking to each other in the car, that is how people would talk. But as the drama itself becomes increasingly melodramatic and increasingly contrived and has to lead up to a big climax, that jars with the contrivance of the narrative itself. So what you get is a really bizarre thing, which is it's either a contrived action movie which has surprisingly realistic characters, or it's a realist character study with surprisingly unrealistic action sequences. It's not to say the action sequences aren't done realistically, but it's one of two things. Now, if you take it as the first one, which is that it's an action movie which obeys certain action movie narrative rules, but it happens to have really realistic characters, then it's a success. If you say it's a realist character study about the down-to-earth nuts and bolts of cops' lives, then that melodramatic overarching narrative doesn't work for me, or at least, because frankly, I could just have watched these guys drive around in their cars, drink coffee, and do, which what I believe actually probably is the real reality, is you do loads and loads of jobs that are unconnected to each other, and it's the day-to-day thing. It doesn't have to lead towards some kind of, huge climactic criminal revelation. That is a way of saying that the very thing that is good about it, which is the reality of that situation, and it is, and I understand exactly what Friedkin means when he says that, I would have liked that without the melodrama, to be honest. But the honest truth of it is that most people go and see it because it's a melodramatic film which starts with a chase sequence. It's got lots of really nail-biting action sequences, and they are nail-biting, no two ways about it. And it just happens to be one of those that has got surprisingly realistic characters at the heart of it.
So when Friedkin says it's the best cop drama ever, you'd say
no, it's not. French Connection is,
but then that's his.
Exactly.
So if you take French Connection out of it,
well, that's like saying take 2001 out of sci-fi. You can't.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying, where does it sit? If he's saying it's the best ever and you saying it isn't, but where does it sit then in the?
It's as I thought I just attempted to say. In terms of action movies, it is a superior action movie which is grounded in very, very solid, realistic characters. But that's what it is.